All right, guys, here it is. I told you it'd be middle of the week, and by gosh, it was middle of the week. This took a lot of work to compare PLC and STAX and HIP all together in one place. So hopefully this is one point of reference for everything you need to know for the FSA side and for the crop insurance side. So I'm gonna just dive right in. So let's talk some about ARC and PLC. Here's the program comparisons we want to go over. For PLC, which is what most of you have on your cotton, the price of cotton, the yearly price for December cotton is going to have to fall below 69 cents for there to be a payout. Well, it's probably not going to happen. We've had days in early trading where cotton was $1.20. Right now, just for crop insurance, it's averaging $1.01. So PLC is not really that attractive as a program because I think we're going to have higher prices that would negate the PLC payment. You have to opt in or opt out of PLC at FSA by March 15th. All the shareholders on every farm that you have to agree. So here's an example. Let's say that I have 3 farms in a county and I have complete control over farm number 1 and farm number 2. I can take those out of PLC, no problem. But if I have another producer on farm number 3 that also has cotton, he and I have to agree. If we can't agree, then that farm number 3 has to stay in PLC. That's fine, but the problem with that is if you opt out of PLC so you can take STAX, you have to let me know that all of your farms didn't come out, because if you leave farm number 3 with the STAX coverage on it, they're going to charge you a penalty. The federal crop says you cannot be dual enrolled, and so that farm number 3 would have 60% of the STAX penalty charged against you. So we don't want to do that. So if you come out of the PLC program, you've got to let me know if every farm comes out or just some farms come out. So that's on you, but I've got to know because there's nothing I can do to get you out of that penalty. If you come out of PLC to take STAX, let me tell you a little bit about STAX. STAX is 90% coverage for a county yield that's been accounted for by crop insurance. So everybody that's been farming in your county has been turning those yields in to their agent. Agent's been uploading to Federal Crop. Federal Crop gets a true average yield number for the county. That's what the STAX yield is. You insure 90% of that yield. To see if you have a claim, though, it's based on county production. So after the 2022 crop year is over, all that crop insurance data is turned in, claim data, APH data. Sometime August of 2023, you'll know if your county qualified for a STAX indemnity or not. You have to sign up with STAX with me by February 28th. So March 15th, PLC, opt in or opt out. STAX, February 28th. A lot of growers have had the hurricane indemnity plan with wind index, HIP WI. If you take HIP, it's 95% coverage based off of your own yields, your own history. It goes from the top level of your crop insurance up to 95% of your average. And then you participate in a percentage of that. 20%, 30%, 40%, 50%. How much HIP do you want to participate in? It's based on your yields. What triggers a claim? A Cat 1 storm in your county or the adjoining county. That's the only thing that triggers a claim. From the time you plant till the last day of the insurance period, which on cotton would be on out in December. February 28th is the sign-up date. So here's some common questions, guys, that we're getting for all of these programs and how they work together. I'm going to jump right into that. Here's the first question. Eric, can I take PLC and sign up for STAX? No. If you sign up for both programs or fail to enroll in one or the other, you will have to pay a 60% STAX penalty and you will not have any coverage. But remember, like I told you, that is based on each farm. So you can de-enroll a certain farm from your PLC coverage without affecting its other crops or bases, and you can have both. Some can be enrolled, some cannot be. But you cannot take STAX on a farm that has PLC enrolled for cottonseed base. Eric, another question. Can I take PLC and HIP coverage at the same time? Yes, you absolutely can, as long as you meet each deadline for sign-up. So February 28th is the sign-up deadline for HIP. But you had to have, if you wanted the PLC, you had to have met that deadline of March 15th. But you can have PLC and HIP at the same time. We've been doing that for years. STAX is the one that's a problem, okay? So you can have HIP and you can have PLC at the same time. All right, what does HIP look like? I've had it, but help me remember how it works. So here's a slide that's gonna help you know how that works. Let's pretend that I've got a cotton farm with 1,000-pound average yield on it, and I've got 70% level crop insurance coverage. So here on my slide, my multi-peril coverage is indicated at 700 pounds in kind of a lavender color. HIP actually sits on top of your crop insurance policy. So HIP goes up to 95% of what my average yield has been on that farm. So if I had a 1,000-pound average yield, the top of my HIP possibility would be 950 pounds. The bottom of my HIP would be 700 pounds. If you were on 60% level, then it would go from 95 down to 60. And the amount of HIP coverage would be greater. The lower the level of your regular crop insurance, the more HIP payments you can possibly have. But in this example, there's 250 pounds worth of HIP payment there as a possibility. So cotton's averaging $1 a pound, so that's $250 worth of coverage if I have a Cat 1 storm and I opted in for 100% of the HIP coverage. Now, most guys did not opt in for 100% of the HIP coverage. Most of you chose 25% participation or 33% of participation, or some of you even 50. So if there was 250 pounds there available at $1 a pound, that's $250. So if you participate in HIP at 25% and you get a Cat 1 storm, your rough payout $62 an acre. If you take 33%, it's $82 an acre. If you took 50% participation in HIP, that's $125 an acre. So it's very, very simple. You take from the top level of your regular crop insurance up to 95% of the average yield of that farm. That's how much is available, and then you say, how much do I want to participate in HIP? HIP is very, very easy. So, Eric, here's another question. Eric, can I take STAX and HIP on cotton at the same time? Yes, you absolutely can. HIP coverage will start where the STAX coverage ends. So STAX takes you to 90% of the STAX average yield. That sits on top of your crop insurance. So in my example, the crop insurance stopped at 70%. HIP takes you to 90%, so that would leave you 5% between the 90 and the 95 of HIP. So you technically have STAX and HIP at the same time. If a payment is triggered on HIP, right, let's recall what triggers a payment, Cat 1 storm in your county or the adjoining county. If you have a Cat 1 storm that's triggered, you would get the HIP payment, but it would be greatly reduced because you only had about $50 worth of possible HIP payment instead of $250. So having STAX underneath your HIP would make your HIP payment be a lot smaller than it would normally be. So here's what STAX and HIP looks like together. So we'll use my same example, 1,000-pound average farm. Okay, so let's look at HIP first. So HIP goes from 95% of that farm's average down to the top level of that crop insurance for underlying policies. So it would only go from 95 down to 90 because that's where your STAX remains. That's where your STAX lives. So instead of having a $250 option, if I participated at 100% of HIP, if I have it over STAX, now in this case I only have $50 worth of coverage. So that's saying I participate in the HIP that's available, but there's only a small portion available if you take STAX. So HIP is based off of your own history. It only pays for a Cat 1 storm. So what makes the STAX pay? So let's look under that in the blue writing. It's based off the county established STAX yields, and it pays if the county production average is lower than that yield. So in this case, the one I used, 90% of this farm, this county's STAX yield was 766 pounds at $1 times the 1.2 factor. That's 900 STAX at the very top percent, 90%, that's $919. STAX exists between 90% and 70% of the STAX approved yield number. So from $919 to $715 is $204 worth of possible STAX payment if the county picks short. So most guys are not going to spend this kind of premium to get all of the STAX. Most of the guys that have STAX do STAX with 90% level, 5% range, or 10% range. So if you took STAX with 90 and 5% range, you're looking at about $2.75 an acre, $51 an acre possible payback. So the more STAX you take, the more chance there is for a payback. So this is what HIP looks like over the top of STAX. You can't actually have them both at the same time. So, not to be redundant, here's another question I've been getting. Eric, can I have a STAX and a HIP payment in the same year? Or can I have a STAX and a HIP claim in the same year? Yes, it is possible to be paid for STAX if the county's average production falls below the STAX yields, and if a qualifying storm, Cat 1 or higher, in your county or the adjoining county makes a HIP payment. So if the county production is below the STAX yield due to the storm or any other covered peril, then yes, you could actually have a STAX payment and a HIP payment in exactly the same year. So what is your biggest risk? Here's how I see it. This is the page everybody's been waiting on. Here's what I think. If you think that your county, your chance of loss in your county will be to drought or excessive rain, STAX is a better option than PLC. Your county would have to pick below 90% of its traditional STAX yield, but you have to opt out of ARC or PLC to take STAX. STAX is for the grower that's really not as concerned about a hurricane. Maybe you're further up in the state, you're not as concerned about a hurricane. STAX may be a better fit this year, so I would opt out of PLC and take STAX. HIP. If you would say you're in a high chance of getting a Cat 1 storm in your county or an adjacent county, I would say keep your HIP policy. It'll pay back better every time, because remember, with HIP, it's all or nothing. You get the payment or you don't. It doesn't have to affect your farm. It doesn't have to affect your yield. If you get the Cat 1 storm in your county or the adjacent county, you get paid. Even if you've already finished harvesting your crop, as long as you're within the insurance period for that crop, you're going to get the payment. So if you're worried about something other than a hurricane, STAX is a good fit. If you're worried about a hurricane, HIP is the best fit. And with HIP, you can keep your ARC or PLC just like you got it at FSA. You don't have to change anything. What if you put HIP and STAX together? What producer is that the best for? This is for the producer that says, I have a high chance that my county will pick less than its traditional yield due to excessive rain or due to excessive drought, but I also have a slight chance of a Cat 1 storm. You can stack both of these things together and it's still very, very affordable because you're participating at such a low rate of HIP that the coverage is almost not free, but it's very, very cheap. So, but if you do STAX and HIP there's no ARC or PLC. Guys, I hope that's helpful. You call me when you get this. Please watch. Well, I guess you're looking at the end of the video. I hope you watched it all. Hope you paid attention to it all. I want to make this as simple as I can, but I'm trying to give a lot of information. So here's, one more time, here's a recap. I don't think PLC will pay because I don't think we're going to fall below 69 cents. There's pretty unanimous agreement on that. If you're not going to take STAX, just leave your PLC like you got it. Don't change anything. If you want to do away with PLC and add STAX, that's fine. There's no problem with that. But remember, if you do that and you're a southern tier grower, it's going to really hamstring your HIP weed policy, your hurricane policy. So I don't know that that's the best fit, guys. If you're concerned about a storm, if you're storm prone, if you're far enough toward the Gulf that you're storm prone, I would value the HIP policy more than the STAX policy. If you're further up in the state and hurricanes of Cat 1 status getting that far north are a rarity, then I would opt out of PLC. I would take STAX at 90 and 5 or 90 and 10. Then I would add what was left of the HIP on top of that just in case you get one. Guys, 100% participation for these more northern counties. It was so cheap, you're looking at $2 for 100% participation. So when you cut it down over the top of STAX, and you're talking about 50 cents an acre. So we've got to make our changes by February 28th. You got to make FSA changes by March 15th. I hope this is helpful. Call me. I'm happy to discuss this at length. Please watch this. Please share this, and I'll be in touch soon.